Today I'm really excited to show you this fabulous location. Here, settled in between the beautiful rolling hills of the central Victorian Highlands, lies another hidden gem. So this old ruin came to my attention some time ago, so I decided to come back and shoot it under the light of the Milky Way on a dark, moonless night. Once again, I've found an amazing night photography subject, only a few hundred metres from a busy motorway. This district is home to some of the most magnificent views in the state. When viewed from above, the landscape takes on a whole new dimension, full of colour, shape and texture. So today I want to show you around this property and give you a closer look at how I approach lighting and shooting this scene. Now I know I've talked plenty of times about asking permission from the owners to come into places like this before I come in, and I've done exactly that. There are actually quite a few signs around the property saying keep out, etc., and there's gates locked. But they were very happy for me to come. In fact, when I showed them some of the results of the pictures, they were absolutely delighted. When I first saw this old ruin, I quickly worked out that the best perspective would be to the southwest, as the building is somewhat nestled in a valley between the hills, with trees covering the eastern view. I wanted to shoot the Milky Way setting over the hills in the western sky, with the ruin in the foreground. So that meant I'd need to be here later in the year to get the correct perspective. So I came here during October, as I knew that would suit the composition I was after. Of course, I wanted to shoot when there was no moonlight, as I was going to light paint the ruin. And a moonless night is always best to get the most detail out of the Milky Way. Okay, so here we are. I've set the camera down nice and low to the ground on the tripod. This is the Nikon D750 with the 20mm f1.8. I'm going to shoot the night sky over the top of the building with the Milky Way core setting down in that southwestern sky. I'm going to shoot a 20-second exposure at f2.2 at ISO 2500. Then I'm going to use my light painting method to light the building. I'm going to stop down the aperture to f4, still 20-second exposures, but I'm also going to drop the ISO to about 600 or 500, thereabouts. Now, I often talk to you guys about how I line up to know where the Milky Way is in the sky. So I use a number of methods. Basically, the first thing I do is look up stellarium, usually on my desktop at home before I even come out. And that just gives me an idea of where the Milky Way is going to be at any time of the year, and also whether there's going to be a moonless night. Secondly, I can use photo pills on my phone. So I just get the augmented reality view up on the screen, line it up over the building, and work out exactly where that is in real time. The third method I use is in stellarium, it gives you compass bearings as to where the Milky Way will be. So all I do is simply look up on my phone, just a compass, and say, for example, here, it's about 220 degrees southwest, and I know that that is where the Milky Way will be on this particular night. So all I have to do is get my compass out, point 220 degrees, and there it's going to be. Oh boy, it's getting very hot. I think I might take off the jumper. So, I want to talk to you about lighting. Now, light painting is one of the things that I do for all of my nightscape images, and especially on something like this. Now, this building is, it's got so many shapes and angles, and particularly texture in the bricks. Now, if I light that from the angle of the camera, then it's going to become a very flat lighting. I want to get off on angles, so I'll come around to the sides on all the different sides of this building, and I'll light it from angles. And what I get there is shape, especially across the bricks. I've got to be careful not to overlight. In other words, put too much light because it will flare. This particular building's a fairly light colour. Now, the other thing I'll do, I'll get lights underneath this tree, which is on the end of the building, and that helps to just give that a little bit of, I guess, places it into the scene as well. The other thing I will do, when I light this foreground grass, which is here in front, and it's quite attractive actually, but lit from the side and low down on an angle, and that makes it stand out beautifully. There's something very special about a building that has withstood the passing of time. A strength and charm that simply cannot be underestimated. Now, I mentioned previously that I like to use low-level lighting inside the building to give that warm glow. So I've got my Z96 video light here with the orange gel on the front. And what I tend to do is put it somewhere where the light source might have been. Now, in this case, there's a fireplace. So obviously that's where the light source would have been. And what happens, I'll put that inside there and let it face right out into the main part of this building. Now, it gives it that, I guess, lived-in look. I fully realise that this is an old ruin. It hasn't been lived in for many, many years. But I love that historical connection that I get by adding that little touch. So while I was here, I decided I wanted to shoot some star trails with the building in the foreground. So typically what I do is tend to point my camera in a southerly direction here in the southern hemisphere to get the circular rotation. So I've put my camera down here, I'd say about 10 or 12 metres away from the building itself. So I've got plenty of sky over the top. I've set my camera to f2.8, ISO 650, and I'm shooting 10 3-minute exposures to get the circular rotation of the Earth. Then what I'm going to do is light paint the foreground, which is probably a little bit simpler than what I did the first time, but I'll still probably put typically 2, 3, maybe 4 light painted shots in and just simply blend them together later in post-production to get that final result of the star trail. I'm always blown away by the peace and serenity of these old buildings. And so close to the freeway. It's just amazing, and I love it. So besides the obvious attraction of the old building on this block, there's so much more beautiful stuff here to see. So come on, let's go and have a look. Just have a look at this awesome gum tree up on top of the hill, surrounded by the rocks. Now that would make an awesome panorama view, probably late in the Milky Way season, with the Milky Way stretched right over the top. I'll have to get back for that one. Now the reason I brought you up here, this is at the top of the hill overlooking the old ruin. When I was here previously, I saw this gorgeous little sapling growing up in amongst the rocks here, and I thought that's going to make an awesome nightscape, which it did. I came up here with my 35mm Sigma f1.4, shot this at f2.2, 35mm focal length, ISO 2500. I did some light painting, one from the other side of the rock and one from this side of the rock, and I think it looks awesome. This is such a typical sight in the Australian spring countryside. We drive past these places countless times and don't really take the time to have a good look around and just enjoy the serenity and peacefulness of these locations. But of course at night, they come alive with the glorious Milky Way overhead and a little bit of light painting to go with it. Well, as you can see, I never tire of exploring these awesome old places, and I've plenty more to come in the next few weeks. Thanks again for watching, and as always, I very much appreciate your company. See you next time.